first.
tell me about the work you do.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm the Vice President of the United Nations Association of Australia, WA Division. My job is to, apart from developing the organization, putting policies, procedures in place, I'm also in charge of making sure that we communicate effectively to our members and also external stakeholders. So that also includes help raising funds, getting more partnership, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. And my biggest passion in this organization is to raise awareness of international peace, security, and specifically for me, economic empowerment. So if everyone has a job, if everyone can sustain their lifestyle, can support their family and community, there tend to be less domestic violence, there can be less necessity for going into war, or living in horrible condition, and being able to access health, good health, medicine, medical support, and also having a lot more positive, constructive future, not just for themselves, but also for the people around them.
Sandy, you're living in one of the world's richest countries.
Yes,
it doesn't seem
I
like
agree.
a problem that
I agree.
most people outside of Australia would envisage you having such a sense of urgency for. Is it something that is there a part of Australia that people might neglect?
So I mentioned about this 3 years ago or 2 years ago at the International Labour Organization conference. I think in Australia we're extremely fortunate to have the minimum standard of living. And we have social protection as well, and we have all sorts of labor protection, whereas a lot of our neighboring countries like Indonesia or even Thailand, that's not given to them. And so as Australians, and I would like to see us as being the thought leader of this region, it would be a good idea for us to be able to extend not just in terms of aid, but also thought leadership in terms of support, in terms of ideology, to our neighboring countries, and giving them that access to raising awareness and why this is so important. And so somehow, I hope by advocating what we do, more citizens of Australia are aware of that and would therefore demand our government to align ourselves to these SDG goals so that we can trade or we can link up and we can have better connections with our neighboring countries. So I would say a lot of people in this region, in the Southeast Asia region, even in the Asia region, are going through a huge change at the moment. And yet we still have 800 million people living at the poverty level.
Right.
And so, particularly for Western Australians, we're living in the same time zone as 60% of the world's population. I think we are prime and we are really placed in a good position to facilitate that. To facilitate that dialogue, to facilitate that exchange.
So your job scope is not just Australia. Beyond Australia, you're helping to influence, make changes.
Well, yes. So for Western Australia, I take on this position, and my job and my role is to advocate about all UN goals, but specifically the SDG goals now, the 17 goals. But every time when I go to Europe or I go to Singapore, when I do business with my clients, or when I'm engaging local champions, my job is really, or my passion really is to be able to learn from these people and see what best practices I can bring back to Australia, or what we have in Australia, what we can bring overseas, and basically try to elevate that level of awareness if possible, in the business sector, for example. So this year, for the very first time, I'm spearheading the promotion of the SDG goals in the private sector here. Something that is something, like a dialogue that happens within silos in certain activism space, but never quite cut across to the business sector, because not because the private sector does not appreciate human rights or peace or security or economic growth or gender equality or reducing inequality. It's just that they've been, very often private sectors have been seen as the main culprit. And so in order to lower that inertia, what we do is, instead of going in and say, look, would you support human rights? The way I see it is, would you support gender equality? Or would you support infrastructure and innovation? Would you support better air for us, or better quality of life on land? And so a lot of companies are already doing that. And it's easier for people then say, yes, I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that, you know.
Let's take a step further.
Absolutely. When they see these positive stories or these benefits, then they're more open to have that dialogue. And so a lot of companies also think that you know, the SDG goals are supposed to be driven by the government. Okay, the government should set the legislation, they should set the law.
And you think about Australia, Perth, and the United Nations, it's like it's another world. Yeah.
Correct,
so
absolutely.
it's something that belongs somewhere else.
Correct.
So is it an uphill battle trying to?
Oh, it's
get
not
people on board?
easy. It's not easy, but we're getting there.
Right.
At the moment, in terms of ranking of SDG, we are behind New Zealand, we are behind Germany and countries
we
like
as
Canada.
in Australia or Western Australia? Perth?
Australia
as a
as
whole.
a whole. So that's something that we can always work towards.